Let's take a look at some charts on Link from this week's article on Brave New Coin. So I think of Link as an interoperability network. It's perhaps better characterized as an Oracle network with decentralization. Now this is a list of partnerships that they have with various companies. A lot of people ask me, oh, they have a partnership with XYZ. Does that matter? Is that relevant? To me, as a trader, none of it is relevant until there's a physical connection with the project and people are using it. So just saying there's a partnership with Google, I don't really care. Partnership with somebody, Intel, I don't really care. Intel and Chainlink are connected at the hip and people are using the network for those purposes. To me, it's irrelevant. It's great hype, obviously. Shows promise for the chain in the long term, should a connection like that ever come to fruition. So seeing these partnerships is good, but I wouldn't say it's ultra mega super bullish like in the near term. I think it's just really good for hype. It shows that there's promise in the chain. It has a use case, etc., etc., etc. Because Link was an ICO, I always like to look at the token supply of any ICO, of any pre-mined coin, especially who holds the coins, how much do they have, what did they raise, and when do they have enough runway to run the company over time, which they clearly do. They have a lot of money here, USD value currently. Let me calculate it real quick. I don't actually know. So they're roughly sitting on, Smart Contract Limited, the company behind Link, roughly sitting on 1.1 billion USD equivalent, notional. Obviously, it's not liquid. Obviously, they can't just dump this all in the market immediately. What's going to end up happening is slow drip over time, whether or not they have a plan for this or not, public or private. I haven't seen any lockup agreements, any vesting agreements as far as how they will unravel this over time. XRP gets a lot of flack for what they do, and they just essentially slow drip stuff onto the market. A lot of these projects do the same exact thing, including Link. So there's that to consider when you're thinking about long term. It's also important to look at this when price is at an all-time high. What do the holders of the pre-mine plan on doing? Do they plan on slow dripping faster when price increases? My guess is probably. We'll see. We'll find out. I looked at the wallet that is slow dripping the token supply. I don't see evidence for an increase in the rate that they're selling. So it looks like they were selling. So in 2018, they sold 7 million. In 2019, they only sold 500,000. And then in 2020, they've sold 1 to 3 million so far. I use the word selling. I don't know for sure whether or not this is all going to the open market or if it's going to some partnership agreement stuff. I don't know. All I know is they move it out of the wallet that has the balance. To me, I assume it's a sell. I assume they're either selling it directly or the people that they are sending it to are selling. Either way, it's selling pressure in my mind, which may not be 100% accurate, but that's the way I consider it as a trader. So what we're not seeing here, which is good, is we're not seeing, increases in this slow drip stuff. One thing that's still a question mark for me is these node operator rewards. Maybe a Link Marine can let me know what's going on there, because I haven't seen plans for what. I assume this is going to be some sort of proof of stake thing, rewarding the nodes on the network, but I haven't seen the hard plans for that. Looking at the nodes on the network, these are some of them. It's always good to see this increasing, to see transactions increasing, to see activity increasing, to see activity stable over time. All this is good. It says whoever's operating these nodes, it's not free. It obviously costs something. Whoever's operating this is continuing to do so for whatever reason at a cost. Some of this is DeFi related. Some of this is just surveillance related. But it all says that there's value here in watching whatever's going on in the Link network. Looking at the ETH price oracle, this is just one example of one of the oracles that Link has. You can see it pulls in all of these various points, averages it together. And if one of these were to fall off, it doesn't affect the oracle price, which is the benefit of an oracle. So if you look at transactions per day and average transaction values, not too much to discuss as far as exciting or bearish, bullish, that sort of thing. This is the average transaction values. The fill here is flat. I don't know if I'd rather see this increasing or decreasing for a chain. if the transactions cost something, you usually see a higher average transaction value because there's less transactions being sent. Whereas on EOS, for example, where transactions are free, average transaction values are very low because there's many more transactions, bringing that average down. And transactions per day are down from the high, certainly, but they're within, this range as far as the new normal for activity on the chain. Looking at NVT and active addresses, this is on the monthly scale. It's good to see active addresses at an all-time high. That's what you want to see for any chain. It's good to see active addresses increasing. This is sustained. It's not like a one and done. It's not like stress testing. There's something going on here. There's definitely activity. It's definitely organic. This is what I would consider organic activity when I look for organic activity. NVT is an inverse metric of economic utility, and to see this down basically at the lows says that the on-chain activity of Link is not being priced in. So to me, this is bullish. You want to see this falling and low. You do not want to see this rising and high. So this just says there's value on the chain that isn't being priced in. This is the GitHub commits for the main repo. It's good to see activity. I don't really look past commits or GitHubs or anything like that beyond just, are people actually coding it? Yes. Okay, good. Is this being worked on by developers? Yes. To me, that's all that's important. You can tease apart quantity and quality beyond that if you want, but I just want to make sure there's still activity being done on developer side. Looking at the Google Trends, it's definitely off 0, so it looks a lot better than most of the chains. This just says, people are searching for what is Link, where do I buy Link, where do I sell Link, how do I stake Link, I can't, any sort of Link search. That's what would show up here. In general, rises in Google Trends correlates with rises in price. So to see this rising over multiple months, certainly more bullish than bearish. All right, let's look at technicals. VPVR, 50-200 yearly pivots, volume, and RSI. So the first thing I like to look at is usually volume, honestly. Like price is great, obviously, but when I see volume just descending like this, that usually says we are boiling this teapot for something to happen here. Whether this is a cup and handle pattern, which has a bullish continuation bias, whether this is some sort of massive Wyckoff markup thing happening. If this was a Wyckoff distribution phase, this was sort of like the upper test failed continuation. I forget the abbreviation, but you'd expect it to break down here if it was going to break the ice, I think it's called. That didn't happen. To me, obviously, it's at an all-time high. It's extremely bullish. It's consolidating above the yearly pivot, extremely bullish. It's not making a double top like it was before. There's no diamond pattern. There's no anything here. There's a subtle bearish divergence on volume, I guess you could say. But to me, this is just patterning out for something. The EMAs like it as far as bull bias here. Golden Cross happened many weeks ago at this point. And VPVR is thin up here because it's basically nearly in price discovery mode. Now, if this is some sort of pattern, like a cup and handle or whatever, pick your poison. Nothing really fits here to me that I can see. But looking at that, the 1618 is basically at the next yearly pivot. And if you treat the pivots like a ladder, you can say, okay, we're climbing above this rung on the ladder. We're going to climb to this next rung at the R2. So it's around $657 as far as the next level up that I'd expect. I would also expect this volume to skyrocket once we break the all-time high here, the USD all-time high. Looking at the cloud, this is on the 12-hour, by the way, for both of these, just because there's not enough data really for the daily and the 200 EMAs, so I just bumped it down to the 12-hour. Again, 12-hour cloud, everything's bullish. 5200 cross, bullish above the cloud, above the Kijun, above the Tenkin. It's just surging above the Tenkin here. It had a bearish TK cross followed by a bullish TK cross above the cloud, which is the most bullish signal you can get. Lagging span above price above cloud. All of this is good if you're a bull. Looking at Link BTC, it has a really nice uptrend here ever since early 2019. It's bounced on this 200. This is the daily chart now. It's bounced on the 200 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. It does look like it's consolidating hard. Nice triangle action here. But in general, it's just stuck to this perfect uptrend since early 2019. It's all bullish. I don't know if I expect this to necessarily go bonkers beyond the all-time high in the near term, but I certainly don't expect it to fall off the table. If this does get very bearish, if it breaks the 200 with conviction, if it breaks the pitchfork with conviction, it may retest this 25,000 sats level, just because that's the yearly pivot. There's not a lot of volume support, below the yearly pivot really, or even above it, until 11,000, 12,000 sats. But I think something would have to go really wrong on the chain, or BTC would have to go bonkers by itself to have this reverse course in a great way, in a large momentum swing like that. And lastly, looking at Link ETH, I do think Link ETH is at the biggest risk for bearish reversal, mainly because ETH has a lot of fundamental stuff coming. Whether or not it's bullish, the market will decide. I think it's enough just FOMO potential for ETH. Essentially, all these new products and chains popped up over the past 2 years, whereas ETH kind of just puttered along. And DeFi has begun to establish itself in those prior 2 years and currently. So I think ETH has a good chance to outperform Link over the next 6 months, especially. And this would just bring this ratio down, I think, pretty significantly. I think it has a chance to drop below 0.0055, something like that. And I only bring up this pair because a lot of people like to compare the two, even though they're not really that similar. It's just they're both not Bitcoin, and people in general, if you're into ETH, you're probably into Link as well. So it's good to look at this odd pair as far as, what do I want to hold over the next 6 to 12 months? Do I want to try to make more money holding ETH, or do I think Link is going to outperform ETH regardless of what's going on with ETH fundamentals? And a bit of a rising wedge here, so more bear fuel. It's consolidating below the yearly pivot. So if anything, 0.1 to 0.13, certainly a decent target for reversal in the near term.